Hello everyone, my name is Don Ginsel. I'm the CEO of Holland FIntech and I'd like to talk to you about artificial intelligence. It's quite an important topic, I think, because today you'll find it in any kind of service you'll get online especially and even offline. Because it's becoming such an important topic, I'd just like to explain a little bit more what it means and also what the relation is to financial services. Because in FinTech we work with all kinds of technologies, but because data is so important, also artificial intelligence plays a very important role. Besides that, I'm also presiding a working group at the Dutch AI Coalition on the use of AI in finance. And I'm very keen on actually telling you a little bit about what's going on in this field and why you should care. We use the word mostly to describe all kinds of ways to let computers deal with data. And sometimes we have this sort of futuristic image of robots dealing with data, making independent decisions, acting almost like humans. So far, artificial intelligence has not come yet. We're very often only in the process of, let's say, advanced statistics, I would say, where we let computers run analytics pretty much independently, so they can come up with conclusions on very specific questions that we ask them, but within a very specific constrained set of data capabilities that they get. They're not able to do everything independently, they just perform a certain task, and only how to do that task they're able to learn by themselves. And we have different categories of artificial intelligence. Machine learning, for example, as well, which is actually a subset of artificial intelligence. More specifically about how computers can learn. And one of the subsets of that, for example, is the use of neural networks with deep learning, which gives more capabilities to computers to deal with data. This is all from an end-user perspective, not per se that relevant, but it's good to understand that in any case, the complexity of how machines are coming to conclusions based on data is expanding. And that's where the capabilities are becoming pretty big, which is also raising new questions. How do we assess the outcomes of, for example, such decision-making, if we as humans cannot trace it back to how it relates to the source, for example, anymore. And this is especially in finance a very sensitive topic that we definitely should address. Okay, if we understand a little bit now about artificial intelligence, can we then talk a little bit about how you see that happening in finance? What's going on there? Well, we've seen, especially at the beginning, that algorithmic trading was a very early field that was exploiting algorithms and therefore computer algorithms, artificial intelligence, to actually make decision making. If you look at the stock markets these days, trading goes lightning fast. And that means that if you have to wait for a human to make a decision, you're always too late. So in general, this is one of the fields where automated trading came up very early to actually make sure that if you, for example, want to buy a stock or an option online, that you immediately get a quote and you can do a trade without a human having to be in the loop. These are one of the first applications that we saw going on. And beyond that, we've seen much more applications these days. Today you can think about credit analysis for insurance and banking, for example. You can think about fraud prevention, security analysis. Think about, for example, assessing alternative data that's available about an investment portfolio for asset managers, or fraud prevention and transaction monitoring for against money laundering. Besides that, these are, I think, really big applications that are on the rise very much. You will also see that there's a lot of interest, of course, from the field of marketing, which I think is something that we see also beyond the financial industry. So across the board, digital marketing is taking off and also making use of artificial intelligence quite a lot. And we see those applications in finance as well. And that's very much about behavioral analytics, right? Can we assess how people behave based on certain information? Can we then predict what they will do next? And can we actually help them taking the next step? These, of course, we see that in a marketing field, they have sometimes a bit of a negative consequence and we might feel seduced to take actions that we don't want to take, right? Buy products that we actually don't need. But on the other hand, you could also turn it around and we could actually also get recommendations on what would be a wise decision for us. For example, if we plan to save for a certain goal, when would be the right time to save and how could we best achieve that goal? And I think that's one of the bigger promises now that we see of artificial intelligence, especially in combination with the larger availability of data, for example through open banking, where bank data can be actually employed by third parties, that we get to much better financial recommendations to help people manage their finances, to make investments and save for a sound retirement, for example. So I think these are sort of the core points of where we see developments in finance, and I don't want to go in too deep to all of them. I think you should definitely explore hollandfintech.com, where you might find much more information about how all these fields are evolving at the moment. What I do find interesting and like to explore with you is how, as an end user of financial products, are we actually noticing that artificial intelligence is being employed. I think one of the things that always strikes me is, for example, that if I use my iPhone and I walk out of the office about the time that I want to go home, that actually my iPhone tells me how much time it will cost me to get home, while I actually didn't tell the phone that I was going home. So what it actually does is it does pattern analysis and therefore makes a recommendation to me. So it has assessed that if I leave a building, not being my house where I sleep, around between 5 and 6 p.m. for example, that it actually assumes I will be going home, and then it could actually get in traffic information to tell me how much time I need to get there. Well, this is a very simple example of recommendations where artificial intelligence is being used. Well, the same goes for shopping online and a lot of products, but I think especially there what consumers notice from this is more relevant recommendations, better use of data, so it actually becomes information. And in the financial field, it's mostly about getting financial plans and investment recommendations that are much more in line with what you would expect. One of the things I'm especially enthusiastic about is that if we can use that to basically give everyone a personal financial advisor to just help with daily spending, daily investment decisions that everyone has to make, but for which you just can't afford generally, or at least most people can't afford, to consult a financial advisor. On the business side, the interesting field especially lies in line with, for example, robotic process automation, which is where artificial intelligence actually helps you to bridge the offline world and the online world. So dealing with paper documents and bridging that information into systems that you already have that are digital, that's where robotic process automation can play a big role. And it just helps to automate simple daily tasks that you would otherwise have to spend a lot of time on, but are repetitive, so not interesting, not engaging, and very prone to errors. These tasks could all be automated very easily using artificial intelligence in the current state. For SMEs and also larger businesses, artificial intelligence is mostly about seamless process automation. From start to end, actually being able to automate everything and having one single data flow to manage it all. And this is also what I'm very enthusiastic about, because I do believe actually that we can move towards the point that you actually get one big dashboard where you could get all the operations from your company coming together, including the financial implications. And from there on, you could actually also access financial products on the back end. There's quite some challenges. In the EU, we have GDPR, the General Data Protection Regulation, as well as the new Artificial Intelligence Act that regulate how we can use data and also how artificial intelligence can use data. We'd like to know how decisions are being made. Why? Because any type of analysis could actually lead to a bias. So if you use the wrong data, if you've used the wrong assumptions in models, if you've just set the parameters wrong, the outcome might be completely off what you intended. And besides that, there's a very strong social responsibility as well. Because as society, we don't want people to be excluded from the financial services industry. We want financial services to be fair towards everyone, and that means that we really have to assess whether certain fraud analytics or certain marketing efforts or certain product acceptance criteria are actually not leading to the wrong decisions and leading to the point that people don't have access to these products, or that they become unfeasibly expensive, for example. We've seen, of course, a case in the Netherlands where the tax authority actually completely misinterpreted their fraud recommendation engine and by default identified the appointed risk factors as being guilty of committing fraud. And that completely escalated into quite a political scandal. And was that actually about artificial intelligence actually being wrong? Well, no, not really, but somehow in the process, the recommendation engine was somehow being interpreted as a decision engine. And this is of course a very big error to make, because you might actually have criteria that lead you to suspect a certain fraud, but that does not mean that you should accept that as a fact. You should of course make a certain assessment, especially if you talk about personal implications that it might have as people having to pay for something or being persecuted for that. And so I think this is one of the fields where, especially since this has happened in the Netherlands, a lot of regulators and policymakers are worried about. So they're very keen on trying to make sure that explainability of AI develops further, that there's a good set of regulations about which data you can use, how you can use it, and how to test the outcomes that artificial intelligence brings. These both put basically boundary conditions to what you can do with artificial intelligence. The potential of artificial intelligence going forward, it will be everywhere. So you'll see that continuously around us, you'll see that software and digital solutions are able to completely surround us in such a way that life becomes just very easy. You probably know it if you use your smartphone in the way that it's actually able to use the data of where you are and how you use your apps to actually recommend you services and ideas. That's only going to expand. But what we will see at the same time is that we will be more critical about which data we actually want to make available. So we also see, for example, big tech firms, but especially also financial services firms, building in privacy to a much larger extent. They will much more give you the option to actually control which information goes where and whether you want that data to be shared, yes or no. And that will have implications also on the user experience. Because if you actually eliminate data to be used by AI, you will also, for example, get lesser relevant recommendations. And so these are the things I think that will be the challenge for the coming decade, to identify how far will we go and how far are we willing to give up a piece of privacy for services that really help us forward. And I think this is also something that we all have to learn, because I think our general understanding of what data is and how it can be used is something that for most consumers is still far, far away. While the economy itself is actually already just running on data to a large extent, so we need to be much better aware of this. And this is where we also believe that financial education and digital education need to go hand in hand to make sure that people understand the implications of the use of the technology, the data, and understand also actually the benefits of making certain investments there. Thank you for watching this video. We'd really like to invite you to go to hollandfintech.com to check out other articles, videos, and also events that you could attend to meet people active in fintech and discuss all the developments that are going on at the moment. Thank you for now, and see you next time.